Yes, would you ask Mr. Roome to come back in, please? Right, Mr. Roome, ready to carry on?
I am, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Billett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Roome, can I ask you please to go to CEL 401069? This is a month-end report from February 2015, which I think you wrote, didn't you?
Yes, it would.
Got your name on it.
Yep.
Can we go to page 5? We can see here what you're doing with the St George London Dock project, which we were discussing before the lunch break. And on page 5, it says Major Project Contractor Activity Overview, and there are 4 projects there, the last of which is the St George London Dock. Meeting with specialist fire consultant H&H to look at how to specify the RS5000 product in the facade, awaiting redraw of section detail to show exact build-up before comment. Now, this is obviously for customers who wanted that. Is it right that for such customers, like St George at London Dock, you would engage on precise differences between the system tested and the proposed cladding system for the project?
Yes, if we were asked that information, yes.
If you were asked for that information. Is it fair to say that Harley, turning to Grenfell, never engaged you on that issue?
No, they didn't.
And you didn't insist on seeing the exact build-up at Grenfell Tower in order to advise them as to whether RS5000 was suitable?
I didn't, no.
We'll come back to Grenfell later on. Can we then go back to the discussion about Kingspan letters? CEL 401066, please. And I'd like to go to the second email down on page 1, please, and over to page 2 that you see there. This is an email from you to Paul Evans, Debbie Berger and Richard Millward, copy to John Roper, and it's about the London Dock, St George Berkeley Group. Hi team, feedback from a meeting with H&H Fire on Thursday. We were reviewing the facade details for the St George London Dock project. We all feel that we, me and HH, need to review the section drawings as they need to be amended. I will follow up with all parties next week in a joint meeting and report back. Interesting conversations around how the NHBC and Kingspan are viewing issues of 18 metres. See that? And then you give further information in the second paragraph on the next page under the heading Kingspan. We can just flip over to that. And then you say there, Kingspan had been offering their, quotes, professional opinion, unquotes, letters for each project. I've had a look at one of these letters, and the only sentence that had anything of relevance was, it is in our opinion that K15 would be fit for purpose if installed onto a non-combustible substrate with fire barriers at 3.5 metres. All the remainder of the letter referred to the previous testing and, in my opinion, was just padding. As far as H&H are understanding the situation, even a letter confirming acceptance by the manufacturer is no guarantee of acceptance by the NHBC. H&H suggested that if we were to perform further testing and there was an issue with cost or being able to book tests in a timely fashion, we might want to investigate approaching Chiltern Fire to see if they're able to perform a BS 8414 test or even investigate European test houses. Hope this info is useful. Just focusing on what you say about the professional opinion letters. First of all, you say you've had a look at one of these letters. Who gave you that? Was that H&H?
I can't say. It might have been.
Do you know how else you could have come across a Kingspan professional opinion letter? Unless it was from a potential customer.
I can only imagine it would have been from a customer, yeah.
Right. And you say the only sentence that had anything of relevance was, and you quote there, and I've read it to you, it is our opinion that K15 would be fit for purpose. It's a pretty bald statement, that. But was that your understanding at the time, that Kingspan were providing these assurances in those terms to potential customers such as St George's at London Dock?
I think that was the idea of these letters, as they were called, yes.
Right. Did Celotex ever adopt a similar practice?
Not that I know, no.
Did you consider adopting a similar practice?
I personally didn't, no. This was just something that was brought to my attention of what was happening in the industry, and as you can see here, I was putting it into writing and then sending it back up the chain of command to the team, or the management team within Celotex.
And it's clear from this that at this stage you understood Is this right? That there was at the very least serious uncertainty about whether RS5000 could safely be used above 18 metres, other than in the exact system as tested?
It was just reinforcing the state that my view was that the stakeholders needed more physical testing or desktop studies.
So you're saying that your concern at the time was that the one test that had been passed by RS5000 in the May of 2014 was insufficient for stakeholders, as you call them, and they wanted more tests.
That's it, yes. I mean, all of these emails that you're presenting to me that I wrote are collating information from the market of what people are expecting, what potential customers or clients or specialists are expecting to have to potentially consider the use of the RS5000 material in their projects.
And was another aspect of that you were having resistance from customers because you couldn't give them an assurance that RS5000 could be used in a different cladding system?
That's true, yes.
Yeah. Were you concerned that Kingspan were able to keep successfully offering K15, which is a phenolic product, for use above 18 metres, simply on the basis of these letters that you refer to, professional opinion letters?
I think the main thing is with Kingspan is that the product had been around for, I think it was around 10 years, and so they had performed a lot more physical tests. The professional opinion letters, I don't know if that had any gravity with the specialists. I don't think it did, and this is what I was basically putting out there in my email to the management team. Right.
Can we then go to a different topic, which is marketing concerns? Can we start with CEL 401026, please? This is an email from you to Fiona at whiteinc.co.uk. I don't know if she's got a surname. Perhaps you don't remember it. Do you?
I don't, I'm afraid, no.
Fiona, and it's dated the 25th of September 2014, so back to the end of September 14. Fiona, further to my first email, please find below our response to your query on the decision to test to BS 84142 as opposed to BS 84141, and then you set out the relevant part of section 12.5 it is, in ADB. You see that?
I do.
Your response is set out below that citation there. Can you recall if she explained why she was asking the questions she was asking?
I can't, no, I'm afraid.
You were clearly getting questions about the basis on which you'd done the tests, though, weren't you, by this stage?
I was, yes.
And your response that we see in the next paragraph down after the quotation says, in the fourth line from the end, having consulted with the BRE, they acknowledge that Part 2 is the more stringent of the two tests, as a steel frame structure is less resistant to fire than a brick or block masonry construction. Building Control reaffirmed this view and advised that testing worst case to Part 2 would allow scope for constructions using Celotex onto masonry. Now, had you actually consulted with the BRE about that point?
I myself personally hadn't, no, but this section may have been lifted from John Roper's response that we looked at earlier.
Indeed, and I was going to ask you that. Can we look back at that, which is CEL 401027? This is the email from John Roper at 1659, which we saw before, to which you respond, thanks, mate, at 1714. Do you see that?
I do.
Yes, I mean, you can see below the pink quotation in the second email down that we've got exactly the same text. So did you just cut and paste from John Roper's email, your response, into your email to Fiona at Whitelink?
It looks like I did, yes.
Yes, okay. So the consultation with the BRE and Building Control is him rather than you consulting with the BRE.
That's correct.
That's what you're telling us. Do you know who at the BRE was consulted?
I don't know.
Or anyone at Building Control? You don't know who?
No, I don't.
Did you yourself believe at the time that you could extrapolate between the two tests in this way, or extrapolate from one to the other?
I was led to believe that having the Part 2 test, which was against the metal wall, was, I wouldn't say better, but it was, I suppose, more indicative of modern construction methods and more relevant than the Part 1, which was a test against a solid wall.
Was your view that if it passed a Part 2 test, which was on a steel structural system, it would therefore pass a Part 1 test, which was on a masonry system?
That's what I was led to believe.
Right. You were led to believe what? Just by looking at John Roper's email, or anything independently of that?
I think it was from the presentation that was given to us in the launch of the product by the team, the marketing team.
So John Roper, essentially.
Yes.
Right. Can I ask you to go to your statement, please, at paragraph 55 on page 17? You say there, and this is at a time mark just before the next paragraph, 15th of January 2015, you say, I continue to push Celotex management to commit to further investment in testing or desktop studies to demonstrate the RS5000 product as being suitable for use in a wider range of cladding systems, as Kingspan were doing with K15. Why did you feel that it was necessary to push Celotex management to commit further investment?
Well, I think this is shown in my presentation, my market analysis presentation, to explain the investment and why the investment was needed. It was to, if we were to compete with Kingspan, who had, I think, 10 years in that particular field with their K15 product, that to achieve the specifications, I suppose, that K15 was being used for, that Celotex would have to put that investment in to at least catch up with the amount of testing that Kingspan had done with their product.
How soon after the launch in August 2014 did it become apparent to you that this further investment in testing and desktop studies was going to be needed in order for you to be able to sell RS5000 in a wider range of cladding systems, as Kingspan were doing with K15?
I can't give you a particular date, but it was something that built up over time.
But over how long? How much time? Was this by the end of October, September, or into the new year?
I mean, just looking at the next item 56, this was sort of a follow-up to that with...
Yeah. Right. So within weeks after the launch, can we take it that it had become apparent to you that the single test wasn't going to do it, wasn't going to let you sell RS5000 to the breadth of market that you had hoped?
I would hazard a guess, if I was pushed, that it would be, I suppose, within the first 3-4 months.
All right.
After the launch of the product.
And your impression, as we get from that paragraph, was it that Kingspan had invested in testing and desktop studies, and therefore were able to market K15 into a wider range of cladding systems than you were able to do with RS5000 with its one test?
That's correct.
Yes, I see. And was that because of the feedback you'd had from customers?
That's right, yes.
Yes. Can we look at CEL 401057? And I'd like to go to page 3 in that email run, please. This is an email you sent to Paul Evans on the 14th of January. We look at page 3. Probably have to go to the bottom of page 2, I apologise. We can see you send this email to Paul Evans on the 14th of January, copied to a large number of executives within Celotex, including Rob Warren, who was head of technical, and John Roper, and Debbie Berger too. And the subject is Greenwich Wharf Cooltherm K15, importance high. And can we go over, please, to page 3? Team, it says, it seems from the email trail below involving Kingspan and their K15 product that our honeymoon period with RS5000 is over. We've been sent an email, inadvertently, with an email trail between Durkan, developer, Kingspan and Squire & Partners, architect. Kingspan are purporting to have passed BS 8414 Part 2, and most interestingly, they use a cement particle board of 12 millimetres thick in the process. I know from another project, Enderby Wharf, Greenwich Peninsula, with Barrett's, where they will be using K15 against CP board, which is far cheaper than an A1, A2 Euroclass board. As far as I can tell from reading through approved document B, there's nothing that specifically states that a non-combustible sheathing board must be used, although this is probably up to interpretation. I'll be in contact with the architect to discuss RS5000, but it is worth reading through the email trail to see what Kingspan are claiming in the current marketplace. You see that?
I do.
Now, was your view there that the honeymoon period with RS5000 was over based on this email trail, or was this something that you were coming to learn gradually before this time, mid-January 2015?
No, I think this was the first proof because
Right.
Kingspan, up to that point, had only had a Part 1 test completed. And this is why the Celotex RS5000 with its Part 2 test, which was when it was launched, was, I don't know if it was a breakthrough, but it was something that the Kingspan product didn't have at the time. So by the time we had, I suppose, written confirmation that Kingspan had achieved Part 2, I, as you can see from here, forward this information directly up the chain of command again to the management team.
Very good. Well, let's look down the chain a bit. If we go to page 5, we can go there. We can see here on page 5 an email at the very bottom of page 5 from Adam Heath at Kingspan to Matthew College and Dave Cummings, who were at NHBC, it seems. And he says, "Dear Matthew and Dave, as a gesture of good faith, I've attached a copy of our most recent test to BS8414 Part 2. In this test, we use 80mm thick cool foam K15 behind a terracotta rain screen. The test report shows that the tested system has met the core criteria of BR135. And then goes on to say, continuing with the testing regime to further expand the scope for insulation thickness and cladding finish, and then goes on to say after that, we must stress that this report is only for use with this project and must not be circulated outside of Squire and Partners or the NHBC. The reason for this is because this report will require some minor adjusting of the text for commercial reasons. Please note any such amendments will not affect the result of the test. The sheathing board used in the test was actually 12mm thick, and this will be reflected in the revision of the report." And then there's a reiteration of the requirement not to pass it on to anybody else. And then it comes to, as a response, just a fire test report. And then Squire and Partners send that to Celotex, it seems. We don't need to get into why they thought it appropriate to breach the confidence. Perhaps that doesn't matter. Then he says, could you please provide confirmation and a BS135 compliance certificate for Celotex RS5000 insulation? This is an urgent requirement for building control. We look forward to your response. So
Sorry.
it's that.
Sorry, excuse
I'm
me.
not sure we can follow this, Mr. Millett. Have you got that on the screen?
I haven't, no.
No.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm still on. I'm so sorry. You're quite right. I'm on page 4.
Oh, well, we're not.
You're not.
We are now, aren't we? Yes.
Okay.
That's the email I was referring to. You see Matthew College of Squire and Partners sending it to Celotex. I'm so sorry. I was running a little bit ahead of you, not paying attention.
I've got
to the
that
screen.
now, thank you.
Yes, but it's dear sir or madam. It says, following our conversation regarding building control requirements for rain screen insulation BR135 certification, please see below. And there is then a request for information and a BS135 compliance certificate for the Celotex RS5000 insulation. This is an urgent requirement for building control. We look forward to your response. So it's that starts off what prompts your email, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't
Your
seem that
concern.
I was copied on that. I don't think there was any attachment to that email by the looks of it, but my name isn't on that.
No. Well, what then seems to happen is, if you look up to page 3, you get this email string. At the bottom of the page, from Celotex Technical to Debbie Berger, copy to you.
Okay, yeah,
That's how you get it, and that is what then prompts, I think, your response, which is the email trail below.
right.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to make sure you saw it all. Was it the discovery, as I think you've confirmed, in fact, of the fact that Kingspan had now done an 8414 Part 2 test that had prompted your remark that the honeymoon period was now over with
Yes,
RS5000?
that's right, yes.
That explains that. Did you take the view that further tests now needed to be carried out on RS5000, more on the need to compete with Kingspan rather than the need to comply with building regulations?
I think looking back on it, they were hand in hand, really.
Right. Can you just explain a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Well, to make the product more acceptable, it needed to be run through further testing,
Yes.
and that in hand would have allowed building control to make informed decisions about its use.
Did you discuss with Debbie Berger or anyone else in management at Celotex the fact that buyers of RS5000 couldn't comply with the building regulations if they weren't provided with further RS5000 test results, which you thought needed investing in?
I don't know if I had specific conversations, but these conversations were being had by email anyway.
It's a fact, I think you'll accept, that there was no further testing ever carried out on RS5000, was there?
Not my time at the company, no.
Why was that?
I couldn't tell you, I'm afraid.
Were you ever given an explanation by anybody as to why there was no further test carried out, despite your protestations that there should be?
No, I was never given a reason.
Did you ever ask for one?
No, I can't remember. Looking at those emails, I was asking for investment, but I was never provided a reason, I'm afraid.
By this stage, mid-January 2015, did the feedback that you were getting from the market about the difficulties of complying with the building regulations, simply because of the single test, lead you to have concerns that RS5000 might be unsafe on high-rise buildings over 18 metres?
It was not concerns, no.
It was not concerns.
So
That means you had no concerns about safety. Is
I
that
had
right?
no, I had no concerns over safety. It was a product that had been tested as much that I knew, and that was the evidence I was given, although in limited form, in the 4 and 12-page document. So I had no reason to believe it was, a risky product as such.
Back to the subject of further testing, then. Can I ask you to look at CEL 401042, please? This is an email, the title of which this is an email from you to Andrew Jones. And I think you need to go down to page 3 to start with, please. Yes, that's right. And the title is Celotex RS5000 BRE Testing, 190 Strand. And it's from you to Andrew Jones on the 14th of November 2014. Do you see that?
I do.
If we go to the email in the first paragraph, para 1, you can see it's divided into paragraph 2. You say, I met with Stephen Howard from the BRE last Tuesday to discuss the option of further testing of our RS5000 product for BS8414 and choice of materials. One thing that Steve mentioned was that he would like to understand better the decision-making process for designing a facade system. He's privy to manufacturers' tests at the BRE, but would like clarification from the other side of the fence. Would you be interested in arranging to speak with Steve? This will certainly help with our future discussions when deciding what we should test. You see that? And then if you go to the next paragraph, at the bottom of page 3 and over onto page 4, it says, we are currently looking to expanding our test data next year and would like to understand from you the materials that you think we should look to test for BS8414. And then over the page, we understand that further testing should involve a non-combustible sheathing and board for BS8414 Part 2, realistic thinnest and thickest insulation solution, cladding panels Class 0 or Euro Class A1/2. The biggest area for interpretation are the cladding panels because, even if they have Class 0, there is no guarantee that they will perform well in the BS8414 Part 2 test. Your input here would be highly valuable. Finally, we never got down to speaking about 190 Strand. Are you around over the next couple of weeks at St Edward to run through the current specs? Have a good weekend and speak soon. Just the first point to get it out of the way, Mr. Roome, the project at 190 Strand, was that relevant to the rest of the email, or is it just a follow-up separate point?
I think it was because I knew that Andrew had been attending that particular project for St Edward, and I think he had a temporary base there. That was the only reason.
Now, if we go back to the earlier part of the email, on page 3, you say in the first line there, in the first paragraph, I met with Steve Howard from the BRE last Tuesday. Do you see that? Do you remember that meeting?
Yes, that was the meeting I think that Debbie Berger had arranged, and I attended with her.
I see. And we'll I think, come later to how that meeting came to be arranged. But did Mr. Howard give you any advice in relation to the design of further tests?
I don't think he did, no, at the time.
You say you discussed the option of further testing. What did you discuss in that respect with Mr. Howard? Do you remember?
I think it was to better understand from the respective BRE as to what routes Celotex, I suppose, could go down to perform further testing or further. There was no desktop studies at that stage, but the other options that the BRE could help Celotex with.
Who was at that meeting? Was Debbie Berger there?
Yes, Debbie and Stephen and myself.
I see. And it looks as if by this point, at least, so late November 2014, that you were aware that further testing would be needed to make sure that RS5000 could be used with Class 0 or Euro Class A1 or 2 cladding panels. Is that fair?
I think this was the direction that was, I wouldn't say obvious to people outside the industry, but obvious within Celotex, that a broader spectrum of panels was going to be one of the options, which is shown on the second page.
Exactly. The third bullet point. We can go over to that. Go to the second page. If we can just look at the second page in that, please. You can see the third bullet point, cladding panels, Class 0 or Euro Class. Was that because customers were actually asking you whether it was safe to use RS5000 with cladding panels which were rated Class 0 or Euro Class A1/2, as opposed to the Marley Eternit Natura rain screen you'd used in the test?
I don't think the word safe had come up. It was really just the...
All right, permissible.
Permissible, yeah. I mean, that's a word that could be used. Because approved document B talks about panels being Class 0 or Euro Class A1, A2 above 18 metres.
Yes. And just to repeat the question, because we might have got tangled up on the word safe, let me try it again. By this time, were you getting concerns from customers or requests from customers as to whether it was permissible for them to use Class 0 or A1/A2 rain screen panels with RS5000, given that the rain screen panel in the test was a cementitious fibreboard?
I think I must have been, yes.
Right. And is it right that until such a test was done, namely one incorporating a Class 0 or Euro Class A1 and 2 cladding panel, you realised there was no fire safety test which any system incorporating Class 0 or Euro Class A panels had passed?
There was no test, BS8414 test at that time, with anything other than that Marley Eternit board.
Yeah.
And that route to compliance.
Yes. So that, in a nutshell, meant that you couldn't market RS5000 to a customer or any customers who wanted to use or were planning to use anything other than the Marley Eternit Natura rain screen cladding board. Unless
there was a specialist involved, a fire safety specialist who was following one of the guidance criteria in the BCA guidance.
And you wanted further testing with a Class 0 or A1 or A2 panel in order to expand your potential market.
That's basically correct, yes.
Yes, thank you. Could you go to page 1 of this email run, please? And I'd like to look with you at the email halfway down that page from you to Paul Evans and Debbie Berger on the 28th of November 2014 at 10:52. Same title, Celotex RS5000 BRE testing, 190 Strand. And you say, Hi Paul, Debbie, I've spoken to Total Facade Solutions about potentially giving us guidance as to how to move forward with RS5000 testing. We would need to employ them directly. Andy Jones is one of the most knowledgeable people in the facade industry and advises the likes of Barclay Group as to what products comply. Please let me know if you would be willing to employ them as a consultant, even if it's only for one day. And if we go to page 1 at the top, Paul Evans comes back to you a few days later, 1st of December 2014. Let's discuss as part of our plans for 2015 when we meet on the 19th. Do you know what happened to that proposal, the proposal to retain the advice of Andy Jones?
As far as my knowledge, he was never employed as to give guidance.
Did you ever push it? Did you push it with Paul Evans?
I mean, I didn't have any sway within Celotex. I was just a salesperson, and I was providing this information to try and give my best guidance from the feedback I was getting. And it must be that I was told no, that option wasn't available or wasn't going to be considered.
Can we go to CEL 403439? This is an email chain between you and Roger Taylor at Hadley Steel Framing. And on the 22nd of December, second email down, you sent him an email saying, Hi Roger, I've had confirmation we can get you the boards to the test centre for around 11 a.m. on the 5th. If I don't speak to you before, have a great Christmas. And then he comes back to you the same day, basically thanking you. Do you remember why Hadley Steel Framing were carrying out tests on RS5000 boards?
This was a company who make metal steel framing, METSEC type framing systems, and they had something called a head of wall test, which I hadn't been privy to before, but they'd run a particular fire test. It wasn't a sort of an 8414, but it was a particular fire test that they'd run with a previous Celotex product, and they wanted to replicate the test with the newer product. The relationship there was from my second sales manager after Ian Wakeland left, Richard Millwood, who was my then sales manager for the South, and he had a sort of relationship with Hadley prior to him joining Celotex. So that's how that came about.
I see. So this wasn't subjecting RS5000 to another recognised BR test, like BR1.
It was a recognised test, but it wasn't the 8414 test.
What test was it, do you know?
I can't recall,
All right.
I'm afraid.
Can we go on then to CEL 403451? This is an email on the 8th of January 2015, which follows the test, it seems. And here we see Roger Taylor emailing you and Richard Millwood and Debbie Berger. And he says, in the first line, can we put the performance of the RS5000 board at the top of our agenda for meeting on the 27th? I've just come back from our first fire test using the RS5000 board, and the results are not good. And then he goes on to say, we're doing a load-bearing wall test with 2 number layers of 15mm fire line, which I expected to achieve a comfortable 90-minute result, if not a 120-minute result. And then he goes on and explains what happened in the test. And 3 paragraphs up from the end, he said, to put this in perspective, our previous test using a GA4000 achieved 83 minutes with 2 layers of sound block, not fire line, and failed through the expected manner of the boards giving way and then the fire reaching the back of the insulation. In other words, the GA4000 performed better in the fire condition than the RS5000! The result of this is that we're now £6,000 out of pocket, as the test did not give us the result we were looking for, even though the elements which we were providing the fire protection were still performing when the insulation combusted. Please can you consider the above and give me any feedback? Otherwise we will have no alternative but to continue to recommend the Kingspan K15 board in situations over 18 metres. Now, you can see in the last line there that he's referring to have no alternative other than to continue to recommend K15 above 18 metres. Is it right that the reason they were carrying out testing was to look at the suitability of use of RS 5000 above 18 metres in the context of the test they were carrying out?
I don't know if it's specifically above 18 metres. I don't think that test was specifically for the 18 metre criteria. It's a different type of test.
Yes, I think in fact the test was a test under BS 476 Part 21, load-bearing wall.
Right.
Do you remember that? Does that ring a bell with you?
Not specifically, but I'm aware of it.
Right. Do you know what relevance the test had to fire performance and 18 metres?
I don't know.
It's clear from the last paragraph there that Mr. Taylor clearly thought that because RS 5000 had failed the test they were carrying out, they would have to go to Kingspan K15 for use over 18 metres. What did that tell you?
Well, it tells me, looking at it now, that it would be for each wall up to and over 18 metres.
Did it tell you also that yet again K15 were going to dominate in the over 18 market because of problems that the RS 5000 was encountering in testing regimes?
I'm not sure. I can't say that I knew. I don't know if they had tested their system with Kingspan at that time.
Right. Might have been there a degree of confusion here about the use of K15 over 18 metres given the test they were carrying out?
I don't know.
You can't help me. All right. In the first line, as we've seen, he refers to an agenda for the meeting on the 27th. Do you know whether that meeting took place?
I don't know. I mean, if it did, I've got no record of it, so I may not have been in attendance.
Did you discuss this test with Mr. Taylor's email with Debbie Berger or Paul Evans or Richard Millward?
I think, well, I'm pretty sure I would have done, yes.
What was the upshot? Do you remember?
I think that Richard and Debbie took the lead on this and took it forward, and I'm pretty sure that it was retested and it passed on the second attempt, but I can't be absolutely sure of that.
Right. Can we go to CEL 403481, please, and go to page 2 in that email run? And I'd like to look with you at the email at the bottom of the page. This is an email from Debbie Berger to you and Richard Millward, dated the 15th of January 2015, about the meeting with Hadley on the 27th of January at Hadley. Are we still going to meet with the facade consultant and Steve Howard from the BRE to better understand fire performance of a range of facades and testing options? And you respond the same day. If you just look up the page, please. You respond, the facade consultant would need to be appointed and paid for. I thought I'd mentioned this to you and Paul Evans last year. Did the meeting with the facade consultant and Steve Howard, as Debbie Berger expresses it in her email to which you're responding here, take place at all?
I don't think so, no.
And again, why is that, do you know?
Well, I think it says it there because they weren't going to pay for a facade consultant.
Right. Did you get a response?
I don't know. Is there any further response?
Well, there is. I come to the response you get from Debbie Berger the same day. If you go up to page 1, is yes, but then Christmas got in the way, with a smiley face. We should probably meet up to discuss plan of action, you, me and Richard. Personally, I think we could learn a lot from a facade engineer, consultant and BRE input. BRE input help better inform our design decisions. And then at the top, Debbie Berger writes the same day, when are you guys next in the office, or I can come to where you are? So that's, I think, how the matter was left in the middle of January. Do you remember whether the meeting took place at Hadley on the 27th with Roger Taylor to discuss the results of his test?
If it did, I wasn't there.
Right. And do you know what happened to this proposal to talk to a facade engineer and BRE, where it was left off in the middle of January 2015?
No, again, I can't help you with that, I'm afraid.
Now, at this point, mid-Jan 2015, is it fair to say, summarising where we've got to, that you and others within Celotex have become aware that more testing had to be done to enable RS5000 to be used in any system different from the one that was tested in May 2014?
Yes.
Yes. And until such tests and certifications were received, you would struggle to compete with K15 in the market for high-rise buildings?
Correct.
Thank you. Can I then turn to your relationship and dealings with Harley? Can we start with CEL 409874? This is a Salesforce entry, and it's quite difficult to read, so I'm going to ask for it to be blown up as small as possible. Sorry, as large as possible. We can see that it relates to Merritt House, if you look at the right-hand side of it. And it's assigned to Mark Willoughby, with a due date of 10th of June 2014. Can you see that?
Okay.
And the entry under comments says, Ben called to ask if we had an alternative to Kingspan K15. Project is over 18 metres, so could not help at this time. Needed product on site in 2 weeks. Let me know that they have just been awarded 2 new overclad projects in London in autumn. Once we have 18-metre fire test, inform Ben and team so we can win spec. Now, is this a record of a call that you think you had with Ben Bailey of Harley?
Yes, I think this is something that needed to be cleared up. The records of Celotex with the assigned to field, this chap Mark Willoughby seems to be a current employee, and I think what happens with the database is that for each person that is assigned that role, their name would appear. So I can only imagine that this would be a record that I might have put in my time at Celotex, and the license, as it were, for that I was allocated within Celotex has now been allocated to Mark Willoughby. So this is likely why Mark Willoughby's name is on a lot of these documents.
Yes. Thank you. And that's clarified that for those looking at the document. My question, just looking at it, is do you recall this conversation with Ben Bailey of Harley's at this time, 10th of June 2014?
Not specifically, but my memory's not brilliant, and this is why I write things down when they happen,
Yeah.
so I've got a record of them.
Right. Okay. Did you know Ben Bailey at this time, June 2014?
I did, yes.
How did you know him?
He was an employee of Harley Curtain Walling, and the son of the owner.
And how come? When did you first come across him?
I don't know when he started with the company, but I got to know Harley from my time at Hilti.
Yes.
And so it would have been any time from Hilti to Celotex I would have met him.
We can see that this conversation is assigned to Merritt House as the project, if you look at the top right-hand corner. And that you've recorded in the conversation, project is over 18 metres, so could not help at this time. Was that a reference to the Merritt House project being over 18 metres?
I'd imagine so, yes.
And you can see, as I've shown you, it goes on to say, once we have 18-metre fire test, inform Ben and team. You see?
Yes.
And so you must have been aware by this time, June 2014, that Celotex was working on developing a product that could be used above 18 metres.
I must have known by then, yes.
Yes. So that's a good 2 months before the actual launch, or about 2 months before the actual launch, wasn't it?
It must have been, at that time, common knowledge then between the sales force that something was in production or in development.
Do you know why Ben Bailey was asking you if you had an alternative to Kingspan K15?
Maybe because I'd had a relationship with the company previously, and they knew I was at an insulation company, and they'd asked me that specific question.
Did you tell Mr. Bailey that you were developing an insulation product as an alternative to Kingspan K15 that could be used above 18 metres?
I can't recall.
As at this date, did you know that the test had actually happened?
I didn't know.
Because it had happened on the 2nd of May 2014. You didn't know that that had happened?
No, I just knew that behind the scenes the product was being developed.
Right. Going back to the record, it also says that Ben Bailey told you, it says, let me know that they have just been awarded 2 new overclad projects in London in autumn. Was one of those Grenfell Tower?
I can't be certain.
Did he mention Grenfell Tower, do you think, at the time?
If he did, I didn't write it there.
Can we then go to CEL 409877? If we could just blow that up as large as possible as well, please. This is also assigned to Mark Willoughby, but I'll assume that it's yours. It also relates to Merritt House, if you look at the right-hand side, and it says Ben Bailey. And the activity type is technical assistance, if you look in the left-hand column there. Task topic, 18-metre fire test. Due date, 31st of August 2014. Comments, update Harley curtain wall on 18-metre fire test to close 2 overclad projects raised by Ben Bailey on last call. And then underneath that it says system information created by Mark Willoughby, 10th June 2014. Can you just help me with what this record is?
It may be a reference to giving Harley some sort of information that the product was due for release at some point in time.
So, yes, it looks very much like it's a reminder to yourself to update Harley by or on the 31st of August 2014 about the 18-metre fire test. Would that be right?
I don't know if it's a phone call that I've had with him or a reminder. I can't be certain.
Underneath the reference to Mark Willoughby in the second line on the left-hand side, it says Celotex task type phone advice. Does that help you?
Unless it was a telephone conversation I'd had with Ben, just giving him an update on when the release date of the RS5000 would be.
There's a date in the bottom right-hand corner, last modified by Mark Willoughby, 18th of July 2014. Does that help?
No, it doesn't.
Right. Is it fair to say that at this time, and we can pick a range of dates between the 10th of June 2014 and the 31st of August 2014, you saw Harley as a potential target or customer for sales of RS5000?
They were one of many customers involved in that market.
Yes. Can we look at CEL 409875, please? This is another Salesforce entry. And again, can we blow that up as large as we can? And again, it's Merritt House on the right-hand side, as you can see. Underneath that name, Ben Bailey. On the left-hand side, Mark Willoughby. Celotex task type report, activity type, rain screen contractor. Task topic, 18 metres fire test. Due date, 18th of July 2014. And then it says underneath that, met Ben on the Merritt House project to discuss current demands on site and future projects. I've had to use Kingspan K15 as we do not currently have a product. have, and I think there should be two number, have two new projects that they are on the verge of winning to start later this year: Grenfell Tower, White City, Telford office. They have also taken on two more designers in the office, follow up in office once we have a K15 solution. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Now, is it your understanding that competing with Kingspan K15 was the driving force behind the development of RS5000, at least according to this record?
I think it's quite clear that Celotex wanted a piece of that market, yes.
Thank you. And that market, as you refer to it, saw RS5000, or you would want it to see RS5000 as an equivalent, if not better, product than K15.
That's correct, yes.
Now, here we do see Grenfell Tower referred to as one of the two projects that, quote, they are on the verge of winning to start later this year. Do you remember what information Ben Bailey gave you at that meeting about the Grenfell Tower project?
I don't. No, I don't. I mean, he just named two projects. It would have been a site meeting, so I don't think he would have been concentrating on that particular project. He was on Merritt House, which is listed there.
Yes, so a site meeting at Merritt House.
Yeah.
Not Grenfell, of course.
Yeah.
No. Do you remember whether he told you that Celotex FR5000 had originally been specified as the insulation material for use at Grenfell Tower?
I don't think so, no.
Did he tell you it was a project over 18 metres in height?
I can't recall, no.
What at this stage did you know, if anything, about the cladding system proposed for Grenfell Tower?
I think at this point, nothing.
Now, if we go to your witness statement, page 3, can we look at paragraph 11? You say there, following the meeting on the 5th of August, I started emailing the marketing material to my contacts. And one of the people I emailed, you say, was a designer called Ben Sharman at Harley Curtain Wall Limited, a company that designed and installed cladding systems for construction projects. And then you go on to say, I was contacted by one of Ben's colleagues, Daniel Anketell-Jones, a design manager, a few weeks later in connection with the refurbishment of Grenfell Tower. I had received some further marketing material for RS5000 and sent to Daniel all the marketing material I had at that time. And let's just take that in stages. Just in relation to the emailing to Ben Sharman, can we look at that email, please, at CEL401237? This is the email you send Ben Sharman on the 6th of August 2014. Subject, Celotex RS5000 rain screen insulation launch. Now the date, 6th of August, is the day after the launch, isn't it?
That's correct.
On the 5th of August. And you can see the attachments you send him. You send him the product comparison matrix premium and core, the rain screen cladding compliance guide, the product data sheet, and the rain screen cladding data sheet. You see that?
I do.
Hi Ben, good to speak to you again. Just pausing there, had you spoken to him in the past? Did you know him?
Yes, I think I've made that
How did
clear.
you know him, do you think?
Ben?
Ben
sorry,
Sharman.
Ben Sharman.
Yeah.
It's because he was present in the office of Harley. It's quite a small office.
You go on. Good to speak to you again. I have the pleasure of informing you. As of yesterday, we have now launched the first PIR board to successfully meet the performance criteria in BR 135 for insulated rain screen cladding systems, therefore acceptable for use in buildings above 18 metres in height. I'd like to come into the office when everyone is around to present formally the new product. In the meantime, if you would like me to run any U-value calculations, please let me know. That's what you say. Why did you send this email to Ben Sharman and not Ben Bailey, given your previous note that you would inform Ben and the team once Celotex had a suitable product?
It's possibly because Ben was in the design side of the company. Ben Sharman was on the design side of the company rather than Ben Bailey, who was on the sort of on-site delivery side of things.
I see. Did you actually have a conversation with Mr. Sharman following which you sent in this email?
I can't recall.
Right. Was the text of the email underneath the words "good to speak to you again," which starts, "I have the pleasure of informing you," was that the standard initial email you sent out to all your customers?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Now, the wording looks, from the capitals that are used in every word in the description of the product, to be the title to a document. Was it the title to a document?
Yeah, I think it. Yes, sorry. I think it might be another example of my sort of copy and paste technique.
I see. Now, your email shows the attachments, and we'll come to those again. But looking at the wording in your email, and I think we've been over this ground a number of times this morning, Mr. Roome, do you accept that it's not correct that meeting the BR 135 criteria means that a product is therefore generally acceptable for use on buildings above 18 metres?
It's not, I suppose, specific enough. It doesn't show any caveats there, but
No.
it's the term or the phrase that the marketing team had put out.
Right, and you adopted it unquestioningly.
I did, yes.
And would you accept that such a description of the product is potentially misleading because it doesn't contain the caveat?
Potentially, yes.
Yes. Can we look at CEL 401381, please? And I'll come back to this email to Ben Sharman in a moment. I just want to take a diversion and look at a different document, which is this one. This is an email run in September 2014, so a month on or so, 6 weeks on. And if we go to page 3 to start with, we can see that here you are sending Claire Ryan, a lady called Claire Ryan, the same text. You say, "Dear Claire, I've been passed your details by Dawn in the office," and then you can see the same cut and paste paragraph we saw in the email to Ben Sharman of the 6th of August. And you say, "I've attached a number of relevant documents that give details of RS 5000. And that is sent to Claire Ryan. Now, Claire Ryan was at Celotex, wasn't she? Remember?
I don't remember, no.
I think we can work it out, so bear with me. She then forwards that on to John Eggington and Michael Eggington, as you see from just above the FYI. It comes from Graham Todd, in fact, but it goes up the chain to the Eggingtons.
We can't see that, Mr. Millett.
We can.
We might know.
Oh, here we go. Yep.
Yeah, you can. Graham Todd to the Eggingtons. And then if we go to the bottom of page 2, we can see that Michael Eggington sends that on, or sends it back to you saying, "Can we please have the supporting documents?" I don't need to go back again to that. But if you look further up page 2, "Dear Michael, here are all the supporting documents for you. If you have any questions related to RS 5000, please don't hesitate to call." Now, looking at Michael Eggington's email address, as you can see from the foot of page 2, he's at Celotex, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
So you knew Celotex from your customer base, did you?
I knew of them. They weren't part of my direct contacts as such.
Right. Now, if we continue on with the email string to the middle of page 2, if we go up, please, we can see that Michael Eggington comes back to you on the 15th of September, subject Celotex RS 5000 rain screen insulation board for use above 18 metres, and he asks you a question. And the question was, "Are you saying you are warrantying ventilated aluminium systems over 18 metres with this product?" Your original email and advertorial. You see that?
I do.
And you then pass that up to Paul Evans. If you look up to page 1, At the foot of page 1, you say to Paul Evans, same day, "Hi Paul, what reply should I give here?" Now, just pausing there, does that show us that you knew that you were not warranting the use of RS5000 with ventilated aluminium systems over 18 metres, but were reluctant to tell him so without clearing it up with management first?
Well, I think it shows that I was unsure as to the answer and the relevance of the test that had been performed with the RS5000 as to the types of panels that Celotex make or distribute.
Well, were you unsure of the answer? You knew from your own marketing literature that the RS5000 could only be used with exactly the same components as had been used in the BRE test in May 2014.
The test in particular, yes.
So you couldn't possibly be warranting its use with a vented aluminium system.
I personally couldn't know, but I didn't know if the management team were looking to develop further tests with those types of products. So I didn't want to sort of cut him down immediately, or not cut him down, but make a reply without having some sort of management input, because I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes.
What management input could there be, given that the simple answer to a simple question from Mr. Eggington was no? No, you're not warranting its use with anything other than the components which were used in the test.
But at that specific time, that's correct, but I wasn't sure what might have been going on behind the scenes with the management developing the product or future testing, potentially.
I see. And then let's look up the page then to page 1, where we see Paul Evans's response to you of the same day, a little bit later on. "Hi, Jonathan. As part of the development work for RS, we met and spoke with Celotex. John Roper knows Michael Eggington and is happy to discuss with him in more detail should you wish. Once you're back from holiday, please let me, John, or I know how you wish to progress with this." Now, we can see that response and the suggestion of speaking to Celotex. Did anyone ever speak to Celotex in response to Mr. Eggington's question? Do you know?
Yes, eventually. I can't be sure of the date, but myself and John Roper, because he was a product manager and he also had a prior relationship with Celotex, we went to visit the team at Celotex.
And what was the upshot of that meeting?
I can't be 100% sure, but I can't be 100% sure.
Well, can I suggest to you that whatever it was, it certainly wasn't that you could freely use RS5000 with ventilated aluminium rain screens, was it?
No, that would not have been the case.
No. So, in the end, did Mr. Eggington ever get the answer to the question he was asking?
Not implicitly, no.
No. Or explicitly?
No.
No. Can we then go back to the email to Ben Sharman to CEL401237, please? You say in that email, in the third line, that you'd like to come into the office when everyone is around to present formally the new product. Did that ever happen?
I don't think I ever managed to have a formal presentation to the team as a whole, no.
Can I show you what Mr. Untitled Jones says in his statement? This is at HAR 3010149. And I'd like to go to page 6, please, and look at paragraph 23 with you. And he says there, "In relation to the use of Celotex, I do remember a representative of Celotex visiting Harley's offices a number of times to discuss the Celotex product. I cannot remember exactly what he said, but I do remember that part of the Celotex sales pitch that was that Celotex could be used on buildings over 18 metres tall. I also remember the bright pink Celotex brochures which were handed out. Did this include you formally presenting the new product?"
It would have been me, yes.
Right. Do you remember who was present on that occasion or those occasions?
I don't know.
Now, Mr. Untitled Jones, in his oral evidence, said that you were in Harley's offices every couple of weeks and perhaps 30 times a year That's day 36 at page 77, lines 6 to 9. I don't think we need to go to it. Do you agree?
I don't know the frequency, but being in sales, I was always talking to customers or potential customers, either in business development, with people I had not met previously, or regular relationships, someone like Harley, who I knew quite well, to keep an understanding of which projects were on the periphery, and keep my own knowledge of potential projects. So I had a good understanding of potential pipelines, I suppose.
As at August 2014, at the time of the RS 5000 launch, do you remember roughly how many projects Celotex had current with Harley?
Maybe 2, I think.
Right. And were they both high-rise projects?
I don't think so, no.
Was either of them a high-rise project?
I don't think so, no.
Right. So was the position that, although you only had 2 projects with them at that time, you were hoping for more projects from Harley, and that's why you kept visiting them?
I think that's the idea, yes.
Yes. I mean, after all, you are in marketing and sales, rather.
I mean, sales, yes.
That's your job, I suppose.
It is, yes.
Yes. Can we then go to Mr. Bailey's witness statement, Ray Bailey, HAR 3010184, please. Page 8. Now, paragraph 31 on page 8. He says this, and he's talking about the NBS specification. Harley's assumption would be that the product specified is suitable for the project. However, if Harley had any concerns that any product was not suitable, we would have raised an objection. Equally, had there been a product or material that Harley was unfamiliar with in the NBS specification, then inquiries would have been made, including contacting the manufacturer and, if necessary, asking them to demonstrate that their product was suitable for a project. In this case, by way of example, inquiries were made with Celotex, a product Harley had not used before, and he refers to the NBS specification at age 92 there. And then he says, Celotex informed us that the relevant product was in fact the RS range screen product rather than the FR flat roof product which had been specified. Now, we can't find any documents which reflect that discussion that he recalls here. Do you recall any such discussion?
I don't know.
You don't know, or you don't know?
I don't know. Yeah.
If it's not you, can you help us with where Mr. Bailey, or with whom Mr. Bailey might have obtained that information?
I suppose if it wasn't a conversation with myself, who held a sort of a good relationship with Harley, then the only other point of contact would have been the technical team back in the office on the main contact number.
Right. While we're on this paragraph and the reference to FR being flat roof, was Mr. Bailey correct that FR stood for flat roof?
I can't remember exactly what those initials meant.
Right. Going back to Mr. Ankle-Jones's statement, if we can, this is HAR 3010149. Can we go to page 6, please? And look at paragraph 23. We've looked at this a moment ago. He says that I cannot remember exactly what he said, that's the representative, but I do remember that part of the Celotex sales pitch was that Celotex could be used on buildings over 18 metres tall. Now, that is consistent, isn't it? His recollection of what was said is consistent with the communications strategy we looked at earlier, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. Did your sales pitch mention the fact that the test for use over 18 metres was confined to the tested configuration?
I can't be sure, but I'm going from the documents. I would have talked them through the documents as they were presented.
Do you remember discussing the specification guide and compliance guide with Mr. Anketel-Jones?
I can't be certain. I know that we had some email conversations, and I sent him all the details that I had on the product or any test literature that I had available to myself to give to Dan and any other person within the office. But I can't remember having a specific conversation explaining away the way it was tested.
Right. He's referring to two things in this paragraph. He's referring to the sales pitch and the bright pink Celotex brochures. Do you remember pitching RS5000 to him?
I mean, if you call a sales pitch a conversation, that's maybe what happened. I mean, if he's got recollection of the bright pink brochures, it's either because I physically had them to hand and I gave them to him and I showed them to him, or he opened the email attachments, which again would have shown exactly the same but in a PDF format.
Do you remember ever saying to Mr. Anketel-Jones during a conversation, or showing Mr. Anketel-Jones physically the caveat the RS5000 could only be used over 18 metres in a rain screen cladding system which corresponded exactly to the system as tested?
I can't remember specifically saying that to him, no.
Do you remember specifically drawing his attention to that caveat in the compliance guide and the specification guide?
I can't be certain, no.
Given the importance of that caveat, was it not important to you to make sure that Mr. Anketel-Jones was thoroughly familiar with it and therefore thoroughly familiar with the limited use to which RS5000 could be put above 18 metres?
It would have been important, yes.
You say it would have been important. I think we can agree that. But did it occur to you at the time as sufficiently important to point it out to him expressly so that he really understood it?
No, it didn't.
Why is that?
I'm not sure. It was all there in the information. I was dealing with a specialist in that field, and I was expecting the knowledge to be there to disseminate the information that I was giving him and others within the team.
Was there a sense in which you perhaps didn't strenuously strive to draw attention to the caveat in the hope that he might not pick it up and therefore fall into what you later categorised as a green use category of customer?
That wouldn't have been my intention, no.
Was it part of your thinking?
No.
Mr. Chairman, is that a convenient moment?
Yes, I think it is. Thank you very much. We'll have a short break now, Mr. Roome. We'll come back at 25 to 4 and resume then. And no talking to anyone about your evidence when they're out of the room.
Of course.
All right. Thank you very much. Would you like to go with the usher? Thank you. 25 to 4, please. Yes. Would you ask Mr. Roome to come back in, please? All right, Mr. Roome. Happy to carry on?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Yes. Can we then go on, Mr. Roome, please, with your early contacts with Harley as the next topic? We've already looked at the Salesforce entries that show by July 2014, Ben Bailey had mentioned Grenfell Tower to you. Can we then look at CEL 409876, please? This is another entry from the Salesforce database. And again, can we please have it enlarged as much as possible? And just look at it a little bit more carefully. Merritt House is what it relates to. Name Daniel Anketell Jones. And then on the left-hand side, it's assigned to Mark Willoughby, Celotex task type report, activity type rain screen contractor, task topic 18 meters rain screen product, and then due date 11th of what looks like August 2014. And just for more dates at the bottom, it seems that it's created on the 18th of July 2014 and last modified on the 13th of October 2014. Let's take the date of the last modification as the relevant date. Let's look at the comments. Met Dan at the CWCT members meeting. Things have been especially busy recently as they have issues with one of their designers getting things wrong, costing them money. Tim Bennett has now left and gone back to, I'm not sure what that says, is it Prater?
Prater, that's right.
Right. As RS was not launched at the time, we've missed the boat with Merritt House. Agree to meet up later in October to update on projects and look at future specs. Do you remember this discussion with Dan at the CWCT members meeting?
I remember attending the CWCT meeting, and I think Dan was there, like quite a few people that were in that industry.
Yes. Do you remember having this discussion along these lines, as recorded in this entry, with Daniel Anketell Jones at the CWCT members meeting?
I can only say it's my entry, so I must have had that conversation.
Again. Can we then look at the meeting and the slides that you sent round afterwards? First of all, can we go to CEL 401255, please? This is an email that you sent on the 21st of October 2014. There's a round robin within Celotex. Do you see?
I do.
And its subject is CWCT AGM and members meeting, RS 5000. Hi team. As some of you may know, I recently attended the CWCT members meeting up in London. The CWCT is the Centre for Window and Cladding Technology based at Bath University and is seen by the industry as leaders in guidance for what is accepted in the construction of rain screen curtain wall builds. And then you attach a list of attendees, as you say in the third paragraph. And then in the fourth paragraph, you say this. The day was a mix of opinion and fact, and a lot of the opinion was pretty one-sided. The use of non-combustible materials only, in caps, exclamation mark. A lot of people that I spoke to afterwards disagreed with a lot of what was said. The most useful presentations were from Dr. Sarah Colwell, Business Group Manager, Fire Suppression, BRE Global, co-author of BR 135 and a lead in the field of fire and facade technology. Presentation attached. NB, ignore the typo on a couple of slides mentioned.
Sorry, we're off the page as far as we're concerned.
I'm sorry, I thought that it was going to come up.
Well, it probably will, but it hasn't done yet.
No.
There we are. Thank you.
Just below the bold. Co-author of BR 135 and a lead in the field of fire and facade technology. Presentation attached. NB, ignore the typo on a couple of slides mentioned. BS8141, as it should read, BS8414. Debbie Berger and I will be meeting with Sarah and a colleague on the 4th of November to discuss how we can better tailor our RS 5000 approach in this market, as we have nearly all found out. The whole issue around BS8414 is far more complex than we first thought. And then there's a a linked in for Hugh McNamara at Arup in Edinburgh. Now, first of all, can I just ask you about the fourth line? When you say in brackets there, a lot of the opinion was pretty one-sided, the use of non-combustible materials only. Does that tell us that the direction of travel, the thrust of the views at the meeting was in general that you could only use non-combustible insulation above 18 metres? Or is that something else?
I think what it was there was a number of different presentations. I can't be exactly sure about all of them, but Dr. Sarah Colwell presented her slides on the BR135, the route to compliance using the full test, BS8414 test. But there were some other presentations by other people sort of putting doubts about using combustible products on high-rise buildings. But as I said there, a lot of people I spoke to afterwards disagreed with a lot of what was said because, going back to the point about you having to use a lot thicker material of non-combustible material to reach the modern insulation guidelines that were being given out, and basically saying it was sort of unrealistic to think that non-combustible materials were the only solution going forward.
Right. At this point, this is October 2014, had you heard of or were you familiar with CWCT's technical note number 73, which they published in March 2011? Was that something you were familiar with?
Can I take a look at it?
Yes, absolutely. It's at CWCT 5019. Technical note 73, and if you look at the bottom of the page, not that page, but the bottom of page 1, it says March 2011, and then go up to the top of the page. Is that a familiar document?
I recognise the logo. I can't say that I remember that
right
specifically.
Let me show you two things in it specifically and see if you remember them from the time. Can you go to page 6? We could see a title on that page which says use of combustible material in the left-hand column. And if you look at the second paragraph, it says, to satisfy the recommendations in ADB, insulation and filler materials in walls of a building with a floor more than 18 metres above ground level are required to be of limited combustibility. And if you go down 3 paragraphs on, it says, just above alternative approaches, the only commonly used insulation material that will satisfy the definition of limited combustibility is mineral wool. It is sometimes argued that thermoset insulation materials with non-combustible facings may be regarded as satisfying the requirement, noting that their decomposition in fire will release smoke. As at October 2014, so some 3.5 years on from the date of the publication of this guidance, were you aware of either or both of these statements made by CWCT that I've just read to you?
I can't be sure, no.
Right. Can we then go back to your email at CEL401255? And you say in the middle there that the most useful presentations were from Sarah Colwell at the BRE. And that hers was one of the most useful. Why was that?
Because we looked at a slide or one of my presentations earlier to the sales meeting, and the good thing about Dr. Sarah Colwell's presentation was that it gave a step-by-step introduction to the testing regime and the pass sort of criteria to BR135 with images. It's a lot easier for me to understand, and I thought it would be easier as a good presentation to forward on to the team internally.
And you go on in the last part of the email, as we've seen, to say that you and Debbie Berger would be meeting Sarah Colwell and a colleague on the 4th of November. to, as you put it, discuss how we can better tailor our RS 5000 approach in this market. I think you did have such a meeting, didn't you, on that date?
We did have a meeting, but I don't think Dr. Sarah Colwell could attend in the end.
And was it Stephen Howard of the BRE who attended instead?
It was, yes.
Yes, that's the meeting you referred to earlier in your evidence this morning.
Yes.
Did you think at the time that it was appropriate that the BRE, which was a testing house, should be advising Celotex as to how better to market RS 5000?
I didn't have a view on that, no.
Did you think at the time that it was part of the BRE's role to advise manufacturers for whom it had done tests as to how to tailor their marketing approach?
I did not know.
You didn't think that it was part of their role?
I didn't question that, no.
Right. As we've seen, you say, as we have nearly all found out, the whole issue around BS 8414 is far more complex than we first thought. When you say nearly all found out, that's quite a qualification. Who were the people who hadn't found out that the issue around 8414 was more complicated than you'd first thought?
I don't know as to who I'd be referring. Maybe it's the team within Celotex, possibly.
I see. And in what way was the whole issue around BS 8414 far more complex than you had first thought?
I think I meant by that the different routes to compliance, about the variability, I suppose, of the different materials involved. And the different routes to compliance, how it wasn't sort of a linear route as such, other than having a non-combustible material. There was other options that could be used.
You had originally clearly understood that there were two routes to compliance, the linear route and the BS 8414 route. What was complex about that?
Well, no, it was there was things like desktop studies and I think it's holistic fire solutions that were available by specialists. Now, I don't know if that was at that particular point, but there wasn't just one route.
No, that's correct. But you're saying here that there is an issue around 8414, which is one of the four routes to compliance. What was the issue around 8414 that was far more complex than we first thought?
Well, possibly that it was the testing. We couldn't, or Celotex could not be reliant on just the one test.
So you had discovered, is this right, that 8414 did not produce a one-size-fits-all test, and in fact it was a one-size-fits-one test?
Seemingly, yes.
Yes. Now we'll come back to this meeting later, I think, but can we go back to your contact with Harley in relation to Grenfell Tower and look at Mr. Bailey's statement, Ray Bailey's witness statement, HAR 3010184, please, at page 29. And I'd like to go to paragraph 113 in that, please. Now, he says there, about 7 lines up from the end of the paragraph, can you see, he says, in addition, you see that?
Yes.
A representative of Celotex, Jonathan Roome, also attended Harley's offices to talk with Harley's staff about the benefits of the RS 5000 product, specifically for the Grenfell project. Do you recall such a meeting?
I can remember having a meeting, or meetings generally, at Harley. I don't know to which meeting he's referencing there.
Do you remember going to Harley's offices and talking to Harley staff about the benefits of RS 5000 specifically for the Grenfell Tower project?
I think I'd spoke. I must have. I'd spoken to the people at Harley generally at the launch of the product, and I have a feeling I spoke to. It may have been Mark Stapley or Dan Anketel-Jones following that launch, when they highlighted that they had a potential use for the product on the Grenfell project.
And did you tell them that RS5000 would bring benefits specifically for the Grenfell Tower project?
I don't think I would have said something like that, no.
When you did present RS5000 to Harley, did you discover, either at this meeting or the meetings you had with Mark Stapley or Daniel Anketel-Jones, that Grenfell Tower was a building above 18 metres in height?
Yes, I was aware.
Yes. Did you tell Harley that RS5000 was suitable for Grenfell Tower being a building in excess of 18 metres in height?
I don't think I would have said that specifically, no.
Did Harley ever ask specifically whether RS5000 could be used above 18 metres?
I don't know if they would have asked that specifically, but that's what was presented to them in the literature that I would have sent to them.
As a result of you sending them that literature, did anybody at Harley ever ask you for further information relating to the BS8414 test that is described in the marketing literature?
I think further down the line, Dan had requested further information about a BS476 test that Celotex had, and more information, but I can't recall if that was directly just for Grenfell or for, I think he mentioned it was to do with a client request.
Is that the headache email? I have a headache for you.
I think that's the one.
We'll come to that.
Yes.
But apart from that, leave that on one side. In relation to Grenfell specifically, did anybody at Harley ever ask you for further information relating to the BS8414 test, over and above that described in the marketing literature?
I don't think so, no.
Did you ever volunteer the information about what precisely had been tested beyond what was in the marketing literature?
I think I'd already sent them all the documents that I had to hand, right, including the full-page test document that I had available.
Can we then look at CEL 50555? And I'd like to look at the second email down on that page, which is in front of you, at 9:54, from you to Paul Lake, 17th of November 2014. Morning, Paul. Please find the list of must-win projects. Apologies, there was a little confusion at our end. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Kind regards. See that?
I do.
And then a minute later, I think, just about a minute later, you send him the file.
Correct.
So I think you had not attached,
That's correct.
as often happens. Can we first of all, who is Paul Lake?
He, from his email, he worked for another Saint-Gobain company. So Saint-Gobain was the umbrella company who owned the likes of Celotex. So Paul was, I think, the managing director of Ecofon, which was another business. And he headed up a meeting that was run, I think, monthly, where different members of different businesses attended and shared knowledge about projects where different Saint-Gobain products could be used. And so the must-win file was an ongoing document that had been running for some time, where people would put in the information about the projects that they were working on.
Could we go to CEL 50556, please? Is this the spreadsheet that you attached?
It seems to be, yes.
If you look at it, the first entry is Grenfell Tower, isn't it?
It is.
So clearly by November 2014, Grenfell Tower was a must-win project. What did must-win mean? in this context?
I think it was just a reference to the larger projects. They just the project file had always been called must-win projects.
What qualified it for a must-win project? Was it the size of the order value, or the proximity of the delivery date, or what?
I think it was really the order value, or potential order value, I should say.
And what approach would Celotex take to a must-win project which qualified as such, as opposed to one which was a mustn't-win project, if you like, or one which was of less importance?
I don't think there was any differentiation for my part. I tried to keep an eye on all projects.
Right. Why weren't all projects must-win projects? Another way of putting the question.
Well, because of their potential order value, I suppose.
Now we can see that Grenfell Tower here is number 1. It's the first entry in the list, but it's not the largest in terms of order value. Why is that? Why is it number 1?
It may have been the one that I've been. It may have been the newest project. I can't tell from that how that document was sorted.
I was going to ask you, because it doesn't look as if it's been compiled in any particular order. It's certainly not in order value order, and nor does it appear to be in delivery date order.
No.
So do you know why the order exists in that way, that these projects are set out in? Why are they listed in that way?
I can't be certain, I'm afraid.
Right. We could see it was number 1 in here. Does that mean it was the number 1 must-win project, or it was the most recent addition to the existing list, or some other reason?
It may have been the most recent entry. Yeah, I can't be sure because there's no date against the
Right.
time it was, or the date it was put into that file.
Given that it was a must-win project, and on the face of it appears as number 1 in the list of must-win projects, were you under specific pressure as a sales executive to secure the project for Celotex?
No.
Given that it was a must-win project, it must have been of priority, at least, to you to secure it, as opposed to other projects.
Not particularly. There's no way that I could influence the purchasing of a material.
What purpose did a must-win list have?
It was a way of sharing information between the Saint-Gobain businesses, because if there was potential for other products from other manufacturers under the Saint-Gobain banner to be involved, then this was a way of being able to see which projects were being worked on by different businesses.
Well, I can understand that it'd be useful to share information about projects so that other parts of the business might also have an interest in it, but it's really the must-win aspect I'm interested in. What was the point of having a list of must-win projects as opposed to all projects?
Well, as I said, this was to do with the size or the potential income from the project. So only the larger projects were put into this file, which ultimately went into some sort of master file, which was accessible from each of the businesses.
Given that this was a must-win project because of its size, I would suggest to you that, given that you're a salesman, your role was to influence the purchasing of products on that project in order to be able to bring it home.
I could only influence them with the information that I had available to give them.
Yeah. And what I'm suggesting to you is that because it was a must-win project, that there was particular pressure on you to win it.
I don't think there's any undue pressure, no.
Well, I wasn't suggesting undue pressure necessarily, just some pressure.
It never felt that way. My role was a salesperson and I was selling products. Whether that I felt pressure, I don't think I do feel pressure from selling products. I mean, I've had projects in the past which, I think Wayland's House, there was an email about Wayland's House where I had to walk away from the project. It would have been nice to secure that with Harley, but at the time there was no suitable product.
It would have, from a salesman's perspective, it would have been undesirable to walk away from a must-win project, or at least more undesirable than walking away from any other kind of project. Is that fair?
You could say that, yes.
Can we look at CEL 30 11960? CEL 30 is 11960, please. Here is an email from you to Daniel Lankettle-Jones on the 27th of August 2014. Subject: Grenfell Tower, Hammersmith, RS5000 data. Attachments: rain screen zip. Hi Dan, good to speak to you again as always. For now, here is all of the info that I have on the RS5000 rain screen product for use over 18 metres. When you have a moment, please can you send me across some drawings and an idea of who you would look to use for the supply chain. Speak again in a couple of weeks. P.S. Has the Wayland's house ship sailed? I think the answer to that last question was yes, it had. Do you remember having a conversation with Daniel Lankettle-Jones, as you refer to in the first line of that email?
I must have done, yes.
And when you said as always, was that because you frequently had conversations with Daniel Lankettle-Jones?
Well, it's someone within Harley, it's a customer I knew well, and someone that I'd formed a relationship with from supplying them other materials whilst at Hilti prior to me coming to Celotex.
Now, just trying to piece together the timing a little bit, given the subject matter of the subject line is Grenfell Tower, Hammersmith, is it safe to assume, or take from that you had already discussed Grenfell Tower with Harley by or before the 27th of August 2014?
I may have done. It may have been Ben at Merritt House when I had that site meeting who'd mentioned it. It was on the cards as a future potential project.
And do you think it was you had had your visit to the office, which had been referred to by Ray Bailey in his witness statement we saw earlier, by that time?
I mean, looking at the date of that email, the end of August, and I think the launch was at the beginning of that month, then it may have been that I'd managed to speak with some members of the team about the product before Dan or this conversation with Dan.
And in that conversation, did you have a conversation about RS5000 specifically?
It looks as such, yes.
Did you tell him that he would need to order RS5000 as opposed to the FR5000 specified in the NBS specification?
I can't be sure.
Did you discuss the differences between FR5000 and RS5000?
Again, I can't be sure.
Did you tell Mr. Lankettle-Jones that RS5000 was suitable for use above 18 metres?
I might have done, because that was the only product available that would have suited that application.
And again, did you explain or tell him about any of the caveats that we've discussed? In other words, it was only compliant with approved document B for use above 18 metres if the whole system was exactly the same as that which had been tested.
I can't be sure.
If you didn't tell him that, why is there a reason why you didn't?
Well, the information was in the documents, in every one of the documents that I sent to him.
Yes. But given the importance of the caveat, is there a reason why you didn't see fit to bring it home to him specifically in the conversation?
No.
Is this an occasion on which you just let him do his best with the documents rather than alerting him specifically to the caveat and saying, look, Dan, I've got to tell you, you can't use RS5000 unless it's in exactly the same rain screen system. You do understand that, don't you? Do I take it you didn't tell him that?
Not specifically, no, because I was dealing with a specialist and a specialist company who this is their bread and butter. This is what they do.
Do I take it from that in this conversation you're referring to here, he never asked you about what the cladding system that had been tested was so that he could compare it with what was going on in the building?
I can't recall the specifics, unfortunately, of the conversation.
Now, the zip file you attached, take it from me, comprised 5 documents: the product comparison sheet, the LABC certificate and registered details drawing and document list, the BRE Global Classification Report, I say a version of it, the Rain Screen Cladding Compliance Guide and the Rain Screen Cladding Specification Guide. Now, we've already discussed the Compliance Guide and the Specification Guide. Can we then turn to the LABC documents? First, what did you understand the role of the LABC to have been?
Well, the certificate I understood to be a third-party endorsement of the product.
Now, let's go then to CEL 401017, sticking with the LABC documents. Let's see how that comes about. This is an email of the 29th of August 2014 at the bottom of the page. You see there, from John Roper to the UK Celotex sales team and marketing and tech department. And the subject, you see, is LABC Registered Detailed Approval, Celotex RS 5000. All, please find attached our LABC Registered Detailed Certificates for Celotex RS 5000. Now, just pausing there, you'll note the date is the date 2 days after you'd sent the email to Mr. Untitled Jones. Did you have the LABC certificate 2 days before this email came around, do you think?
Was that attachment?
It was part of the zip file attachment.
That I sent to Dan?
Yes.
I must have done then, yes.
Right. Now, do I take it from the fact that it goes to the sales team that you would have received this email?
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
Mr. Roper says in the, I suppose, third paragraph, just at the very bottom of the page, these certificates confirm that Celotex RS 5000 is applicable for use in rain screen cladding applications below and above 18 metres in height. It confirms that we have successfully tested to BS 8414 Part 2 2005, meet the criteria set out in BR 135, and is therefore applicable for buildings with a storey height greater than 18 metres. Did you understand that to have been the Celotex sales line as to what the LABC certificate said or meant?
I think it follows that way.
Yes. Did you tell Dan Untitled Jones at any point, whether 2 days before or after this, that the LABC certificate confirmed that Celotex RS 5000 was applicable for buildings higher than 18 metres?
Again, I don't think I did. I literally just bundled any piece of information that I had, any certificate, any document that I was provided with, and sent that out.
Right. When you received Mr. Roper's email on the 29th of August, and you could see in that last sentence on that, in that paragraph at the foot of the page, where it says, is therefore applicable for buildings with a storey height greater than 18 metres. Did it not occur to you that his summary of what the certificates confirmed couldn't be correct?
I didn't see that, no.
Because it can't be correct, can it? The certificate can't confirm that just because the test of 8414 Part 2 had been passed, RS 5000 was applicable for all buildings with a storey height greater than 18 metres. That would be thoroughly misleading, wouldn't it?
That wouldn't be correct, no.
Well, it would be misleading, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yes. It didn't occur to you at the time that such a description of the product, if that's what the certificate had said, was misleading.
It didn't occur to me.
Can we then look at the certificate itself? This is CEL 609. Sorry, 709, I apologise. And this is the LABC's Registered Details Drawing and Document List. And we can see, just taking it slowly together, it says RS 5000 PIR Insulation Board, and then supporting documentation reference numbers. Celotex 18-metre product, quality production extract. And 5 done from that, you see BRE report, 14th July 2014, indicating class 0 spread of flame, typical illustration for rain screen cladding. BRE letter, 17 June 2014, re BS 8414 test. BRE letter, 17th November 2011, re class 0 testing. BRE Global Test Report number 295255 issue 2, dated 11th August 2014. And it goes on, limitations of use. For use in rain screen wall construction, including above 18 metres in height, the required thickness of board for a particular construction must be established with the use of the Celotex online calculator. Did you see this certificate when it was sent to you by Mr. Roper on the 29th of August? Did you look at it?
I must have done, yes.
Yeah. And when you read limitations of use, did you understand, well, what did you understand the limitations of use to be there or mean?
It's, well, I mean, looking at this document now, it's not particularly clear. The first line states that it can be used in wall construction, including above 80 metres height, and the second one is more about, I think this is alluding to the thickness of the material needs to be assessed by way of, I think, the online calculator. There was a quite basic thermal calculator that was on their website, which could be used to ascertain the thickness of material. But to get anything specific, I think the clients, potential clients, had to go to the technical team, make an inquiry for them to do a full insulation U-value calculation.
So the second sentence about under the limitations of use was about U-values. The first sentence, for use in rain screen wall construction, including above 18 metres height, is hardly a limitation on use at all, is it?
No, not at all.
So when you saw this, did it not cross your mind to ask yourself the question, well, what does that mean? How could that possibly be correct?
I didn't at the time, no.
No. Did you understand that, or think that there was a risk that anyone reading this could look at it and think that it was acceptable to use RS 5000 in any building above 18 metres?
I didn't know.
And then under advice notes, it says Celotex RS 5000 can be used with a variety of cladding systems, including masonry or rain screen systems, and can be fixed back to a structural steel frame with a sheathing board or direct back to masonry. RS 5000 has successfully tested to BS 8414 Part 2, 2005, meets the criteria set out in BR 135, and therefore is acceptable for use in buildings with stories above 18 metres in height, subject to the board being fixed to a non-combustible substrate, alternative compliance to ADB. The product has been tested and achieves a Class 0 spread of flame. Now, I've read it all to you, but just looking at the first part of that part of the advice notes, RS 5000 can be used with a variety of cladding systems. Well, that's incorrect, isn't it, so far as it concerns use above 18 metres?
Looking at that now, yes.
Yes. And then it goes on in the fourth line, RS 5000 successfully tested to BS 8414 Part 2 2005, meets the criteria set out in BR 135, and then this, and therefore is acceptable for use in buildings with stories above 18 metres in height. Just pausing there. Again, that's the same misleading mantra as we've seen in Celotex's marketing literature, isn't it?
It seems to be, yes.
Do you know how LABC got that text and agreed to put it into their certificate?
Unfortunately not, no, I was not involved in this.
And then you see in the brackets, there's a caveat, subject to the board being fixed to a non-combustible substrate, close brackets. But that's misleading because that suggests that that's the only caveat, which it wasn't, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Alternative compliance to ADB. What does that mean at the end of that sentence?
The part which says alternative compliance to ADB?
Yes.
I would imagine that means it's an alternative or way that the board can be used with the non-linear route.
Yes. Did you understand, looking at the advice notes, that at least in the respects I've put to you, this was a thoroughly misleading text?
Again, looking at this now, I would agree with you, yes.
But you didn't think it was misleading at the time, is that what you're telling us?
I don't think I'd reviewed it in that much detail. Now, knowing what I know now as to what I knew back then.
Now, turning to the BRE report that you sent to Daniel Anketel-Jones on the 27th of August, let's look and see it. It's CEL 3011965. Now, this is... I'll wait for it to come up, I'm sorry. This is, on its first page, and I'd like to look at this carefully with you, a document that says BRE Global Test Report, Classification Report, in accordance with the requirements of BR 135, 2013 Annex B, prepared for Celotex Insulation Limited, date 11th of August 2014, report number 295255, issue 2. Is that, I should show you, it's a 4-page document. Well, it runs over 4 pages, I should say. Do you remember sending this document as a 4-page document to Mr. Anketel-Jones?
Not specifically, but I think this 4-page document was the only one that was available to myself and my colleagues in the sales team to disperse between customers.
Were you aware at that time, late August 2014, that in fact the classification report 295255 issue 2 ran over some 12 pages?
At that time, no.
Let's just look at it together. CEL 402133. And what I'd like to do, if we can please, is to have this document on one part of the screen and the 4-page version, CEL 3011965, on the left-hand side of the screen, if that's possible. Now, just so we're clear, the first page of these 2 documents are identical, aren't they? We can see that they're both dated the 11th of August, and they're both numbered 295255 issue 2. Yes?
They seem to be, yes.
Yes. Now, if we scroll down to the bottom of, or look down to the bottom of the page, it probably doesn't work on page 1, but let's go to page 2 of both documents. We can see at the bottom of the second page, or page 2 of the document on the right-hand side, the 12-page document, that it's one of 11 pages. You see that?
I do, yes.
But we don't see precisely what's on the second page of the 4-page version, but we can see that it's a different page, can't we?
It looks to be a different page, yes.
And if let's just follow then, and turn the pages of the one on the right-hand side, first of all. Just slowly turn the pages of the one on the right-hand side up to page 11. You can see that there's part 1, a part 2, section 2, which runs over the page to page 3, 5. And then you see system as tested on page 6, and then page 7, if we go to that, is a construction of the system showing key layers of the cladding system. And then page 8 is construction of the system. Page 9 is construction of the system showing the internal corner details. 10 is the construction of the system showing the fire break layout. And 11 is the test reports in support of classification with the observations at the bottom, which I'll come to later. And then at page 12, which will be page 11 of 11 of the document internally, we see some signatures over R. Jones and T. Baker. You see that?
I do, yes.
Let's now do the same exercise with the version on the left. We started already with page 1. We don't need to go back to it. It's identical. Page 2 is now the same as. We can go back to page 3, perhaps, of the one on the right. Oh, we flipped over. Never mind. Let's take it easily. To stick with the one on the left, go back to page 2 if we can. You can see that you've got details of classified product. Do you see?
Yes.
2.1, 2.2, and then 2.2.2, you get the cladding system described there. And then if you go over the page to page 3, you jump straight to section 4, test reports. So there's clearly something missing. Section 3, for a start, is missing, as is the rest of 2.2. But if we go to page 4, on the right-hand side document, we can see how 2.2 actually finishes. At the bottom of page 4, we can see the first part of 2.2.2 cladding system, and if you turn the page to page 5, we can see it goes over the page to it has a 2.2.3 and a 2.2.4. You see that?
I do, yes.
And those are missing, aren't they, from the 4-page version, because it jumps straight from 2.2.2, skips over section 3 altogether and goes to section 4. Do you see that?
I see that, yes.
Yes. And then we go to the signature page. Let's compare the signature pages. Page 5 of the version on the left and page 12 of the version on the right. That's the same page, at least to the naked eye, isn't it?
It seems to be, yes.
And did you detect at the time that there was something, or shadow around the signatures?
No, I didn't,
On the
no.
left-hand side. Now, we've asked to see the original of the 4-page document so that we can work out how it was put together. Do you remember when you sent the 4-page document to Mr. Ankerdall-Jones on the 27th of August, whether you noticed that it was only a partial document and that parts of it had been filleted?
I can't say I did, no.
Did you not look at it thoroughly before you sent it to Mr. Ankerdall-Jones?
I didn't, no.
Did Mr. Ankerdall-Jones not come back to you and say, where's the rest of the classification report?
He didn't, no.
Do you know, I think it would follow that the answer is no, but I must ask you anyway, do you know who had filleted the classification report down from a 12-page report to a 4-page report?
I don't know.
Do you know why? Presumably not.
No, it must have come from the product management team, I'd imagine.
Well, we've done a bit of digging. Let's see how far we get. Can we go to CEL 409725, please? This is an email from Lizzie Seaton, whose name's come up this morning, I think. She's in market communications, isn't she?
That's correct.
Yes. On the 15th of August, so only 2 weeks or so, not even, 10 days or so after the launch, 15th of August, to you and to John Roper. Hi, Jonathan. As requested by John, please find attached the classification report for RS 5000. And the John here, I'm assuming, must be Jonathan Roper. Yes?
Correct, yes.
Do you know what he had requested?
I don't know if this was the 4-page or the 12-page report or something different. It's not clear.
We've looked at it, and you can take it from me that it's the 4-page filleted version.
Okay.
If need be, we can find the actual attachment, but I think it's what I was showing you, in fact.
Okay.
So we can double-check that, if necessary, overnight. But take it from me that it's the 4-page version. When you received that from Lizzie Seaton, did you not notice that it was a filleted or abridged version of a longer document?
At that time, no.
Did you read it? Did you look at it?
I looked through it, yes. At some point, I don't know if it was right that moment, but...
But you didn't notice that it didn't have a section 3?
I didn't, no.
Can we go to CEL 409728, please? Your response to Lizzie Seaton on the same day, 15th of August 2014. Thanks, Lizzie. I will speak to one of the facade consultants to see if this is what they need. I'll get back to you. What did you mean by that?
So this must have been a request from a consultant, a facade consultant, to ask me for the test document. So this is probably what prompted me to ask maybe John or Lizzie for that particular document that I could then send to them.
Was the facade consultant Daniel Agricola-Jones or someone else at Harley, or was it on a different project, do you think?
I would imagine if I'd called them a facade consultant, then it would have been a specialist, maybe
Yes.
a facade consultant rather than a contractor.
Yes. And did you speak to one of the facade consultants and ask them whether this 4-page document was what they needed?
Oh, it would have likely happened, yes.
And did they not come back to you and say, it's an incomplete document, can I please have the rest?
I think at some stage that must have happened, because then the 12-page document came to light
You're
at some
right.
point. But I can't remember exactly who would have highlighted because I wasn't knowledgeable of these types of documents, unfortunately.
Right, I see. You're right about that, and we're going to see that now. But just this time, mid-August, did this facade consultant or any facade consultant come back to you and say, you've sent me an incomplete document, can I please have the full document?
I can't recall, unfortunately, without knowing who that person was, I couldn't.
Can we then move on to CEL 401377? This is an email that you received from Anthony Harris. I'll just wait for it to come up on your screen. CEL 401377, and it's an email halfway down page 1 from Anthony Harris, dated the 29th of August 2014. Now just note the date. This is 2 days after you send the 4-page version that you'd received from Lizzie Seaton to Daniel Agricola-Jones at Harley. And Anthony Harris, who is a Celotex area sales manager, isn't he?
He was a colleague of mine.
In your
yes.
group, South?
He was, yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon, guys. As per the email from Robbie Taylor below, we are trying to secure a 6,000 square metre RS5000 for a large Vinci construction project in Stratford. The engineers need the full test report as the BRE Global Test Report 295255 issue 2 you sent me has some pages missing. It jumps from points 2.2.2 to 4, and within this is the information the engineers want to see. Can you also comment on the other point Robbie has sent regarding the reference to test report 295369, as they are also wanting this information? And if we want to look at it, the email he's sending on from Robbie Taylor is just below that. I don't think it's necessary to look at it. We can briefly look at it just so that you're clear of the context. And he says in that, at the foot of page 1, Anthony, thanks for the documentation. However, it's been highlighted by the project engineers that this is actually not the BS 84142 test report. And then if you go to page 2, just to finish this email off, he says in the second paragraph, noted that the version of the BRE Global Test Report 295255 issue 2 seems to have some pages missing from the centre of the document. So that's the background. That is why Anthony Harris is sending this message. Can we go back then to page 1 and see his email, which comes to you and to John Roper, as I've shown you. Was it at that point when you realised that the 4-page document wasn't in fact the full classification report?
That's highly likely, yes.
And then John Roper sends on the full version of the BR 135 classification report, as you see from the top of the page, 29th of August 2014. See that?
Yes.
As discussed, he says, there is a full 45-page version of test report 295255, but the salient information is replicated in the BR 135 classification. So you must have realised at that point that those pages were missing. Did you ask Mr. Roper why it was that only a 4-page version had been sent to you in the middle of August and not the full version?
I didn't know.
Why is that?
I can't tell you why, unfortunately. Sorry.
Did you go back to Daniel Agricola-Jones straight away, or really at all, and say, I'm very sorry, I sent you only a partial report, here is the rest of it? Or here is the full version of it?
I don't think I did, no, because as part of the... No, I didn't.
Do you know why that is?
I can't think, no.
Mr. Chairman, we are, I think, mid-topic, and I do have some way to go with this witness, I'm afraid. But that might be a convenient moment.
Yes. It's been quite a long day, and I think the
It
witness...
has.
You probably feel you've done enough for one day, don't you?
Well,
No, but I mean,
There's a lot to come.
there's a bit more to come, and it'll last longer, I think, than we might expect. So I think we'll stop there. I'm afraid it means we'll have to ask you to come back again tomorrow for some more questions, but I'm told you've been warned about that,
Yes, I have, yes.
and you're able to make the arrangements to do that.
I can.
Yes, thank you. Well, in that case, we will stop there. We'll resume at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, please. And again, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it overnight. All right?
Will do.
Thank you very much indeed. If you would like to go with the usher, she'll look after you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Mr. Millett, thank you very much. 10 o'clock tomorrow then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.